if you notice, just take a look around. The room isn't filled, is it? Why do you think it's not filled?
Because people don't care about their education.
The state of the industry. I've seen some very long lines in portfolio reviews this weekend.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think
Yeah.
especially those who are in school are like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not gonna be
That's not me. That's not gonna be me because I'm gonna get a job, right? Like we all said that, didn't we? We all said that. It's just, and I just find it really interesting how that was me. Coming out of school, like, you know, and it's funny as I walk up and down the halls and see all the recruiters, I'm like, you ghosted me last week, you did this, you did that, and you're here asking for portfolio reviews from students when you know very well there is no work for them. Okay, so that's my opener. Because you found the honest room, because we are talking about a topic that I think is very hard. Because the reality is the industry is changing. I mean, you can feel it. Like, you know, this is my third LightBox, and it's just every year it sort of gets more and more depressing in a sense of everybody is looking for a job, but there are no jobs. So why are we here to celebrate art? But really we want work, right? You don't know me. My name is Meridian. I am a story artist that did work in the animation industry. And this is finding your worth outside the industry. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart that I think that everybody needs to hear, but only some want to hear. And you're sitting here because you want to hear it. I'm very, very excited to be here today, truly. Like, all jokes aside, very honored to be here. Lightbox Expo is a wonderful event, gives so many artists a chance to share their work, to meet new people. And so regardless of getting a job and the state of the industry, this expo really is all about the artists and celebrating art and animation outside of what the industry might be doing. And you know who else is excited to be here? My twin sister. No, I'm kidding, it's me. Oh, this is little Meridian. I grew up in Carmel, Indiana, which is a suburb 15 minutes north of Indianapolis in central Indiana. I grew up with the best animation that the era had to offer. Atlantis, Prince of Egypt, Nightmare Before Christmas, Emperor's New Groove, Tarzan, Iron Giant. I mean, I was fed the creme de la creme from such a young age. And I always knew I wanted to work in animation. There was nothing else I ever wanted to be except a gymnast, but that quickly died. I was not good. So it was animation. And so early on, this is like middle school, high school, I picked up a lot of like inspiration, Lunar Chronicles, yes. I did a lot of fan art. I actually, some of my work ended up in the book. So I know the author, and that was like my claim to fame when I was 15 or whatever. And I reached out because we're making a movie. You know, they're making a Lunar Chronicles animated film, and I never heard back. I was like, guys, do you know who I am? Like, right? Yeah, and so this was sort of my work, kind of like what I was interested in high school. Huge inspirations was Disney and Tim Burton. So I always loved to create things that I felt like was a mixture of all of the things I loved that had kind of like both aesthetics in it. But really at the end of the day, I wanted to make movies. It wasn't enough to just draw the characters, you know? And so I tried comics. I did like little comics here and there and stuff in high school, but that still wasn't enough. And then that is when I learned about storyboarding at the DVD extras of The Incredibles. Anyone else? Disc 2? Yeah, and so like I was like absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, I must have been like 10 or 11. And you know, like the extras where they're like, this scene, they're sitting in an empty theater and they're like, the reason this scene was deleted is because blah, 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 blah. And I'm 11 going, and I watch this and I'm like, they're right. They were right to delete that. I'm with you, Brad. But they are the ones who made the story come to life. It wasn't enough for me to just draw characters. I wanted to do more. And so even at the end of the Alice in Wonderland DVD, like, you know, VHR, you let it roll and you saw Walt on a train. Anyone else? Like, you saw him on a train and he's like, hello there. He like enters. I was like totally taken back just by the storytelling, and this was really the heart of how animated features were made. And so it was until after college I decided I wanted to be a story artist. I didn't even know what that was when I was in college. I just went to community college and kind of like did my own thing. And so it was after college, during the pandemic in 2020, I decided to teach myself storyboarding because I didn't know what else to do. And so I was like, I looked at other portfolios online that people had. I kind of looked at what they had and I was like, oh, maybe this is right, maybe this is right. Not really sure. I wrote my own scenes, tried to adapt. They say like adapt fairy tales, like all that kind of stuff. I did all of that. And I worked and worked and worked. I still didn't have much direction. I had a couple sequences, still didn't know what I was doing. And then my big break was getting a mentorship from Women in Animation. And so if you didn't know, Women in Animation is a fantastic organization about gender equality in animation, and they had a storyboarding mentorship for the first time remote because it was a pandemic. So really, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to learn storyboarding if I wasn't living in California, right? And so I learned storyboarding for the first time with Mia Calderon. She is a fantastic storyboard artist from Disney and Netflix. And she took me under her wing. And I remember one of the first times we were doing a sequence together, and she's like, pitch me the sequence. And I was like, what? What do you mean? She's like, yeah, pitch it to me. And I'm like, she taught me everything I know. And so by the end of that mentorship, I had 3 sequences. And so the sequence I ended up making an internship, or the mentorship, was we had to do a character introduction. And so I'm like, oh, would it be, one of my favorite movies is Silence of the Lambs. I was like, wouldn't it be interesting to make an alternate opening to the movie that was Clarice Starling's story that she tells in the movie to introduce her character? And so that's what I did for my sequence. I was like, take something that's somewhat familiar to people, but make it new. So I had 3 sequences. By the end of that mentorship, still didn't really know what I was doing, right? And so the pandemic was still happening, and honestly, I didn't see a future for myself in the industry. I was making smoothies, a tropical smoothie cafe, overpriced for sure. And so I really didn't know what I was doing. And one day, I'm sitting in my room, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. My mom comes in, and she's like, did you see that Pixar is hiring? And I'm like, yeah, I did. What about it? And she's like, you should apply. And I was like, Mom, I know you don't understand my world. You don't understand that I can't do that, but I can't. And of course she was like, you're gonna apply. I'm gonna sit down right here next to you and watch you do it. And she did. It was just for a story position. It wasn't for any. And I was like, oh, here I am. Like, I thought it was so funny, right? 3 months later, I get a message from the person looking at portfolios. They're like, so you didn't make it to the second round. I'm like, oh. And they're like, but we would love for you to apply for the internship. And the internship deadline was in a week. And I was like, oh, but they were like, but one more thing. Before you apply, we have a question. And I was like, what is it? They're like, can you be funny? And I didn't know, because at that point, I only made serious sequences, and Pixar is very they're buddy comedies, and they want to know if you're funny. So in a week, I made a new sequence, I pitched it to the recruiter at Pixar, and they gave me notes, and I revised it, put it in my sequence, and then 2 months later, I was a Pixar intern. And it was incredible. I literally, I was just a kid from the Midwest, in the middle of a pandemic, had no idea I would even be able to enter this industry. And to go from nothing to working at Pixar was a literal dream come true. So it was the pandemic, so we were the only interns that year who were totally virtual. So I was working at 12 to 9 in Indiana. My life disappeared for 4 months. And they're like, oh, she works at Pixar. I'm at home on the computer. And so everything was awesome. I felt like for the first time, people believed in me. That was really big for me because of that. Up until then, it was sort of just a pipe dream, and people didn't understand it where I was. But these people understood, and I felt like I belonged for the first time. And here was me and my best friend, Pete Doctor, best buddy. We had a talk with him, and I think literally, I asked a question. I said, first of all, Pete, big fan. I don't know who I was. I was nobody, but it was so exciting. And so my journey up until that point, I had gotten a mentorship with Women in Animation. boom, became a Pixar intern. And then after that was my big break at Skydance Animation as a full-time story artist. And I worked on Wandla. It's a TV series on Apple Plus. I worked on all 3 seasons. The new season's coming out November 26th. Please watch it. And it was a dream come true. I moved all the way from Indiana to LA to work in animation. I mean, it was like I was living my life. This is our Wandla team. It was my first time having coworkers who were story artists and who were also funny. And I was having the best time of my life. I decorated my office. I was like the only cubicle in the whole office who like went all out in my decorating. I was so excited. And that up there, that's me at LightBox in 2022. I had my table and I was like selling things. And then the bottom, that was an Animation Guild meetup. And I'm like, oh, I'm in, you know, like I'm in the crew. I'm in the Cool Kids Club. Like I was having the absolute best time for a year and 3 months. After that, this is a real picture that my director took of me on my last day at Skydance. I was laid off at Skydance Animation. I tried really hard to find another production to roll onto, nothing available, and I took it really hard. And so I asked myself why. This is, at certain points in your life, you do need to be objective and evaluate, was there something I said? Was there something I did? Was it because I took too many snacks from the kitchen? Maybe. Was it because I made a graveyard of people who rolled off the show and posted it in the common area for John Lasseter to see as he was walking by? Maybe. Anyways, you know, and this was a sad pizza party. Again, people love taking pictures of me when I'm sad and most vulnerable, so I thought I'd share them here with everybody here. And so after I was laid off, I stayed in LA. I did countless interviews. I mean, I met with every single studio, but it just always ended up going nowhere. And months went by, months turned into a year. I was unemployed in LA for a year. And, you know, I filled my days with a lot of movie watching. I got a letterboxd, you know, and all I did was rate movies all day long, eat beef jerky, drink my Mountain Dew. And, you know, once in a while I would take like wonderful walks. This is a picture on one of my walks. I was really sad that day. And I just saw this rainbow, like, you know, and I was like, beautiful Los Angeles. That was also on another walk. I thought it was a cat. It's a possum. So I drove 37 hours back home to Indiana. My brother came and got me, and we drove together. This is me because we popped a tire on the way. I was like already, like life just kicked me while I'm down. Whee! And it's been 3 years since I worked in the industry. The thing that I built my entire life around achieving was over. Like, I mean, that was the only dream I've ever had, was to work in animation. And before I was even 30, it was like I felt like I peaked, and then it just disappeared. And I recognize that not even everybody has the opportunity to even work in the places I've worked and done what I've done. So I'm like, oh my God, like, if I can't make it, like, what does that mean? Like, is it over? Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't love anything else as much as I love animation. I want to work every day doing what I love. I felt like if I was really good at what I did, Pixar would have chosen me to stay at the internship, but they didn't. If I was really a talented artist, Skydance would have done anything they could to keep me at the studio. Why wasn't I good enough? These were questions that I asked myself. And, you know, I still ask myself those questions. Why wasn't I good enough to stay? I was in such a low. When I moved back to Indiana, I didn't know how to move forward. I'm in Indiana. Like, I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't want to do anything else. And so for a while, I didn't even get a job. I like lived at my parents', and I stayed there for like 3 or 4 months just crying every day. Wouldn't get out of bed, super depressed. I started eating, binge eating, and different things like that. But sometimes all it takes is a decision to do something different. I think sometimes we feel like we can work our way to something different, like, oh, if we make little changes, the big change will come. But something like this that is so deeply rooted in us as people, to feel like we are worth something and that we belong, it takes a very intentional decision to be different. And so, I'm somebody of faith, right? And so part of my faith is the idea of repentance. And that word sounds icky and religious, and I get it. But repentance in Greek, the Greek word, the actual meaning is a change of mind. That's it. That's what it means. And so it's not just that we change our minds, but we have to actively pursue the opposite of what we were doing before. So that's true repentance. So like, for me, what did that look like? Like, okay, if my identity belonged to the industry and I really wanted to work there, then for me, what did it look like to choose the opposite? To pursue something that was totally different and totally radical, right? And so instead of telling myself, I gotta change my portfolio until it's good enough, I gotta reach out to these recruiters until I do this and that. The minute we say, if my portfolio is good enough, if this recruiter says this thing about me, we are contributing to the idea that we are not good enough unless they say we are good. We are. It's a hard truth. And so, but what do you do? Like, what do you do to find it instead, right? What matters most is where does our artistic value lie? Where does our identity lie, right? And so what did I start doing? I said, okay, instead of focusing on the industry and focusing on my portfolio. And so I just started like very casually uploading videos to YouTube. I didn't expect to be big. That wasn't my goal. It was mostly therapeutic, to share my experience. And so, and I uploaded this video called Surviving Unemployment. And the only thing worse than being a failure, an inspiration. So, your girl did not want to become famous for being unemployed. That was not the goal at all. I wanted to be known for how great I was. I wanted to be known for how awesome of an artist I was, for the work that I did that was so good. But nay, I go on the Bancroft Brothers podcast and they name it Surviving Animation with Meridian Gray Culpepper. And then it's Stories of Resilience. I know, right? Clocked me. And that's not, I low-key was tweaking, because I really was like, if the recruiters see this, like, oh my God, what are they gonna think? That I love being unemployed, that this is my dream? Like, I didn't want to be perceived in that way, But the more I thought about it, I thought about my career up until now. I thought about, okay, so getting the job at Women in Animation, before then, I was working at Tropical Smoothie. I had the worst boss in history. We once were training a manager for the first day, like we were like training him, and he left for a lunch break, never came back. Right? So after Pixar, I was working at Shake Shack for 7 months. Shake Shack's fries are frozen and they put them in the fryer. And I just have to let everybody know that before you pay the obscene amount of money they ask you to pay for those frozen fries, right? After Skydance, I had the amazing opportunity to become an animation teacher for a school with kids on the autism spectrum. It's a private school, and I taught 8th and 9th graders animation, and it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. I remember I showed them Iron Giant for the first time. None of them had seen it. And I remember after the movie, I was like, what did you think? And they were like, animation used to be cool. Yeah. And I was like, my job is done. Like, I felt like animation Jesus. I could have like gone back to heaven at that point. But, none of these experiences, Tropical Smoothie, Shake Shack, Meyer, I worked at Five Guys, none of those experiences lessen the other experiences. Actually, I'd argue those experiences make you more valuable in the artistic experiences. An artist with nothing to say is useless. An artist who goes through nothing is useless. An artist who is not able to speak to people on a relatable level is useless in the industry. And it's actually these experiences that give us our worth as artists. It gives us voices. It gives us funny stories. This is when I quit because I got a job at Pixar, and it was like a movie, you know. I was like, took my hat and I was like, hey, I'm out of here, you know. And I was like, I'm like marching out, and he's like at the cash register going, Meridian Gray Culpepper, you are unteachable and unemployable. And I left. I'll never forget that.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he said that to me. That's not me, Josh.
With your full name?
Yeah, he did.
What the fuck?
Which, honestly, I was like, that's kind of cute. Like, I like it. So I use my full name now. That's the origin story, I guess, to me using my full name. And so the minute that you understand that actually making it doesn't make you good, it doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, making it means that you compromise something. Like, that's just the reality of it. The higher up you go, the harder it is. It's politics. You do things that maybe you don't agree with. People hire people because they barbecue with them in their backyard, not because of skill and talent. Guys, I'm not sure if you want to be super high up. Like, that's just something that you're going to have to think about, and something I think about. But the great thing about it is that when you do have those pockets of opportunities, internships, like, they're that much more special because you don't hold on to them so much, because you know that you will still be you without them. And so, what's next for me? And so I started an indie animation studio about a little over a year and a half ago, because for kicks and giggles, and also because what I saw in the industry, it was so disturbing to me that I figured, for me, I really wanted to make a difference. And I think it's one of those things that if you're in school or you're at work, people love to talk. People love to talk about how they want things to be different, but very few people actually do things to inspire change and do it themselves. And so I really wanted to be a part of the solution. I didn't want it to be water cooler talk. I wanted it to become a reality. And so in these 2 years, we did a project called Did You Remember the Cat? It was end credits of a short film that won a bunch of festivals and is now streaming on Alter and a couple other streaming services. And then we did a Kickstarter for a short called Planet Jane that had $33,000 that raised for it, which was crazy for an original short. It's 2D animated. I'm so excited about it. It's like a love letter to 90s animation, but it's about my story, working in the animation industry and how I killed myself to get the approval of people and what that did to me as an artist. And I think it's a very relevant story, and I'm very excited. We're in production now. Super, super exciting. We're actually making it a series now, an anthology series that we're pitching next year, and it's going to be sort of cautionary tales, and each one is inspired by an artist's story, their journey to get to where they are. And I want to be able to empower independent animators and independent creators to understand that you can create without permission from a studio to tell you that you can create, right? And so, you know, I don't work full-time in animation, but my 5 to 9 is I work on my animation studio, and I'm not always confident. Am I good enough? Is it good enough? Am I crazy? But it's that weakness and vulnerability that makes my work special. That I remember once, this is a true story, I asked a professional in the industry, I said, how can I become a better story artist? And he said, have better taste in film. And I was like, really? My taste in film got me here. Yeah, I think it was because I was joshing, because we were like in a group like, what's your favorite film? And everyone was like, Lawrence of Arabia. I was like, Cat in the Hat. They didn't like that. Anyways, but like, it's those weird things that aren't super popular, and those moments that make you who you are as an artist.
Short idea, how about that?
Yeah, it was actually my friend who made the short film, Did You Remember the Cat? He works at Skydance. We know each other from Skydance, and he was like, why don't you make the credits for like an animated credit sequence? I was like, oh, that could be fun. And he was the one who actually said this could be the first project of your studio. I know you've wanted to open one up. So that's Dan. Shout out to Dan for helping me. But he encouraged me to do it, but it was all me. You know, I got the LLC registration and I did all this stuff myself, but that was kind of my idea. I didn't really know where it was gonna go because I know I didn't want the studio to be necessarily a vendor studio. Like I didn't want to make things for other people. I really wanted to tell stories and stay independent. I think sometimes independent is independent until it's not, you know what I'm saying? And so I really wanted to like keep it on a small scale because I really wanted to keep the voice and the work behind it authentic as possible. But yeah, I started it and it's one of those things where I'm not trying to like grow it too fast. I'm trying to like naturally just like create stuff that's good. I just want to create good stuff. It's not really my dream to scale, although like I do have that personality. So it's really funny because one of my other friends are also making a short film and I was like, you know what you could do is you can get this much money, then you can do this. And they were like, I'm actually just doing it for fun. I was like, all right, heard. Like I always want to like think big and like scale things, but that's not always what everybody wants. And I got to respect that. But I'm somebody who loves to dream a little bit too much in that sense. But yeah, that's how it started. But yeah.
Well, I'm someone that personally wants to start my own studio in the future, making like feature films.
Yeah, so starting a studio it's a choice. I will say that, you know, you have to think of it not as a creative, but as a business person. Like I know that we all want to start a studio because it's like this freedom to tell the stories we want to tell, to have our friends work on our pieces, which is all true. These are all true things, but understand at the end of the day, you have to have an income. You know, you have to pay people for their work. I don't like taking unpaid people for my projects. I think everyone deserves to be paid. And so that's why we do Kickstarters and different things like that. You know, nowadays, you know, a lot of what they'll say is building an audience before is very valuable. And that would be great if I did that. I didn't do that. Because honestly, it's one of those things where it felt irresponsible to me to do all of this work in hopes of getting money. Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
Don't you see so many indie pilots? Like they're everywhere. And I think that's kind of funny, because I'm like, they'll spend all this time to create a pilot. They don't have a plan after that necessarily. And so I think it's understanding long-term, where do you want to be? How big do you want to get? So that's a conversation you need to have with yourself early on. Because for me, Herringbone right now is something I'm just enjoying. It's not something I want to be super big. I don't want to do the glitch thing. It's not necessarily what I want to do. You know, yay for them though. Like they've grown to this like tremendous size in such a short amount of time. But really it was just because I love art and I want to do it. And I'm trying not to have that mindset of I want to be great, because that's the mindset that got me in trouble with the industry. So I'm trying to just enjoy it instead and like enjoy the process. But yeah.
I was curious, just because I found a lot of similarities, like with your story and like stuff that I've been through in my creative.
Well, that's a really good question. For me, making Planet Jane, you know, the film Planet Jane was very therapeutic because it was a way of processing what happened. And you always, like, don't you hear this when people direct a film, that they don't really find out what it's about until later? Because a lot of it is self-reflection. When a director makes a film, like famously, like when Domi made Turning Red, you know, she didn't realize this film was about forgiving her mother and making peace until near the end of the film. And I think that's what actually is a very beautiful thing about being an artist, right? Is don't we work out what we feel and certain emotions through our art? And I think that's something that I would recommend. And obviously, losing something you care about is grief. You're going through loss. And I think that people who don't understand our industry and what we do don't understand that. It's not just a job to us, it's a part of who we are. It's an identity. And so, you know, it's not like an accounting job, it's not like this or that. And so what I wish people understood who were in the industry was to be very kind and very patient with people that are going through it, you know, because this is a battle for us. We do put our worth in our identity. If I was a good artist, I'd work at Disney. If I was this and that. And because there's maybe a tiny bit of truth to it. That's the hard part. It's not black and white. And so what I would recommend is like allow yourself to feel. And what I've learned from watching Hoarders, she said, you got to feel it to heal it. And I said, wow. I'm on the couch with Doritos going, that's so true. But like, you have to allow yourself to process those emotions, to feel it, to accept it, because moving forward, I think sometimes people think moving forward is like forgetting, but it's not. It's like moving forward is like creating something new out of something, you know? And if you look at it that way, it's actually easier to create on your own. So with Planet Jane, actually, it's been like, there are moments where I'm directing and I'm giving a certain person direction and it gets too real for a second. I'll be like, so imagine you worked so hard to do this and then it's over. And they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, listen. But it's healthy actually for an artist to be able to go through and experience those things. So let yourself grieve. Understand that there is no arrival, but also I think what really helps, at least for me, is finding purpose in things that are totally unrelated to animation. Like, we really have to have a personality outside of this, guys. I cannot stress this enough. Like, I picked up like sewing, I picked up other hobbies, and even teaching at the school was an absolutely fantastic experience because these kids, what is a goal to these kids is very different from people who are atypical, understand about what's hard and difficult. And to see these kids work so hard to achieve tasks that maybe aren't a big deal to us really helped shape my perspective and what I was doing. It made me just appreciate everything I have, and honestly that I was grateful to be there to help them through some of that. So finding things that you didn't expect to love is like one of the greatest excitements of life. And I think I highly encourage that. A job or something else. I mean, even for me, right now, I'm like, yeah, animation could just be a hobby. I could do whatever I wanted. And like, that's the moment where you feel free, right? You're like, I could go into criminal investigation. I could be a breakdancer, you know, like, but that's like why we're creatives, you know? Like, we shouldn't be defined by this industry that doesn't even know what it's doing. And so I think that's one of the things, if you think about it almost like a relationship, because it is, like, aren't interviews dating? Like, you know, like, do they like me? Are they gonna, like, message me back? Like, is it mutual? And, you know, it's also like an abusive relationship where they sometimes reach out to you and say, we love you, you know, like, you're so talented, and then they're like, maybe one day. Boop. You know, like, and you can't let yourself live like that, guys. Like, and I'm a big believer in what's meant for you comes to you as well. And so the opportunities that are going after you are the ones that are meant for you, you know? And I think like having that understanding of like, oh, right now, these people really like me working in this place. Like, it really does matter, like the type of environment that you're in. But some days I have to like wake myself up and be like, okay, the industry does not care about me. It doesn't care. But my coworkers do. Just remember that. Like, please separate industry from like the people who work in it at your level, because they're wonderful people. They're not part of the problem, okay? It's a systematic thing. It's more complicated than that. But yeah, you have to treat it like an ex and be like, I'm no contact, actually. Like, I was so delusional, guys. I like walked by the Sony booth and I stood in line. I'm like, wait a minute, you ghosted me last week. I was like, but that's what happens sometimes when we just common sense, and you have your friend who's like, don't text him back, and you're like, I'm not gonna do it, and you do it anyways, you know, like, it's just, when you look at it like that, it starts to change your perspective a little bit about where your heart goes. But yeah.
Where's the the herringbone? Where does that come from?
Herringbone, so it's a type of stitch when you sew, and it's a type of a pattern, you know, like sort of a herringbone pattern, but it's also the main character of our first feature we're developing. So herringbone is like this giant stuffed crow that like kind of like comes to life, and like it sort of represents a lot of different things, it represents change. And so that's kind of, you know, a little inside scoop. But yeah.
Okay. So for your for your studio, do y'all have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I did start therapy. I started therapy, I think September of like when I got laid off and I moved back home. That was a really big part of it. Was having somebody to not judge me and listen, because don't friends mean well? They do, but they're not the best people to tell your life about because they want to fix it because they love you. But therapists aren't there to fix it. They're here to help you process it. And it's very different. And so I highly encourage finding a therapist, you know, finding somebody who is there to just listen and offer objective perspective. So that was the first thing that started to like take me out of that place. And like on a personal level, I think it's been about 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years I was diagnosed with bipolar. I'm bipolar 2. And so, but it wasn't until after I was laid off that I started to really seriously look into how do I cope with my emotions, because up until then life was like great. I didn't need to cope because I had everything, right? And so then when I was laid off, I had so much trouble regulating my emotions. I mean, it was near impossible. And so that's where the walks came in. I mean, I walked so much. I walked all the way from, okay, so like in the middle, like the Academy Museum, I walked all the way to Rodeo Drive and came back. Like in a day, because I was so sad. And like I lost 12 pounds that summer because that's all I did. But I did stop and like get my beef jerky and my Diet Dew, because like some vices we just can't leave. But walking is incredible. Walking does so much for your health. You don't need to like exercise if you don't want to, like, but walking, like it activates parts of your brain that you just can't when you sit and cry in your bed. It just can't. And so walking, highly recommend. Also, even if you don't have any mental health struggles or any sort of neurotypical things going on, sensory is a huge thing too. You know, they tell you about grounding. So if you're very emotional in the moment, you don't know what to do, a great thing is a lot of times like doing this is really great. You know, even like slapping yourself a little bit. But I like to go out and I like to feel grass and plants because it helps me be here. Like, because when we feel something so intensely, it brings us back. Our brain doesn't know the difference between us being in that moment and us being here. And so grounding yourself is super important. So I love having plants at home. It's also the reason I got 2 cats, because I love them. They ground me. Like, you know, like I can touch them, I can feel their purring. It just helps me understand that being I'm here, I'm not there. It helps me to move forward. But also, like, because I did struggle with eating. I would do a lot of binge eating and different things like that. So what really helped me was honestly to meal plan, because number 1, it helped me not overeat. Number 2, it gave me something to look forward to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's something that people with depression, like that's the number 1 thing that helps people with depression, is plan things, have something to look forward to tomorrow, to have a little bit of structure, because also as someone with bipolar, I thrive on structure. And so when the structure disappears, like my job disappeared, I feel like I can't do anything. Like I can't adapt to like my new life. And so planning things every day. Oh, my therapist recommended every day you do emotionally centering activities. And so I literally have a checklist on my phone every single day. I need to do at least 3 of them every single day, and it works. It works. Singing in the car, you know, certain things like that, like just taking a walk. Like if you plan something every day and have something to look forward to, it makes a world of a difference, because it doesn't feel like the world is like falling in on you in that way. Yeah. So I hope that helps in terms of, yeah. But I mean, like, okay, caffeine. I'm a Diet Dew drinker, if you haven't noticed. And I don't drink tea or coffee, so it's the only way I get my caffeine. But really, really, really try not to drink caffeine in the evening. Just try not to, because caffeine actually makes, if you're on medication, it makes the medication work less. It works against you. So please just like remember that. That's a practical for you guys. But yeah.
question, or at least at the very least, just interested to hear your thoughts about it, because a lot of what you talk, why you're doing this, even if you're not going the typical route.
Yeah.
You know.
Isn't that the question? You know, I think number one, I think that people love you and respect you for who you are, not because you're an artist. That's something to remember. Is that your friends are friends with you because you're a cool person, not because you're good at art. It's a shock, I know. But that helps me understand, because even like making new friends, when I worked outside the industry, it took me a while to figure out how to make friends, because I can't talk about animation, because that was who I was. But actually people like me a lot, even despite that. And so I think it's understanding that people who love you and who are in your life like you for who you are. So it's one of those things that I think that for me, I'm like, everyone's thinking this. Everyone thinks I'm a failure, and they think I'm a loser, and I'm starting this studio, and actually everyone's just worried about themselves. Like no one's thinking about you. And it's really, honestly, it's relieving to know that I'm loved and appreciated, not because of this. Because if it depended on this, that would really suck. Because I'm not good at art every day. Like, art is a very, you feel it, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're not. But it's just nice to know that my worth and value lies in who I am as a person. Like, there are things about me that are nice besides my creativity. Like, one of the things people say about me is like vulnerability. My vulnerability is refreshing. It makes people feel comfortable. That's valuable about me, And so think about those things about you that people, even ask your friends, like, what do you like about me? Like, it's okay to fish once in a while, And I think if you hold on to those things, I think that you won't be nervous taking those chances, because the weight of your success on it is not like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'm nothing. Because that's what happened to me. Like, I felt that way. I was like, if this doesn't work out, I'm nothing. But that was a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves, and the industry tells us, by the way. So listen, put on your tin hats. Yeah.
You just said you're happier today than you were when you were working as an animator.
Am I happier? Yes. I can confidently say I'm happier. Not because I'm so glad to not be working in the industry. Like, that's not why I'm happy. I'm happy because I'm living close to my family and to my friends. I get to see my nephew be born and grow up. I live in a suburb city in a safe area that's affordable. I have a 2-bedroom apartment that I can afford. Like, there are so many things to be grateful for. If I was here, I would not have those things. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's when perspective comes in, is actually I am so blessed. I am so richly blessed. Even if it's not in the way I wanted it to look, I still am. And dreams can still come true even if they don't look like how we wanted them to. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm 100% happier, because I think that, honestly, I'm a better person when not my whole personality is based on this. It's insufferable to hang out with someone who their one thing, like being a vegan, god damn. I mean, it's like they pick Pilates, they pick one thing, and it's like who they are. But I think that I am a happier person today having this not be the thing about me. That's the answer. Do I miss the industry? Of course I do. I miss my coworkers. I miss gabbing. I'm a gabber if you didn't know. I miss all of those things, but I definitely don't miss the pressure I put on myself to be good at it. So, yeah.
While you were in that low point, were you still making art, at least for yourself?
No. I know I'm a bad artist. Some people, when they're sad, they can start making masterpieces. I'm like, how can you do that? Because honestly, making art for me is work. It's like if you worked at accounting, people are like, so do you go home and just sometimes crunch numbers for fun? Like, no. And so for me, when I worked as a story artist, like that was work. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to come home and watch Alone. You know, the show where they go out and they do nothing in the wilderness and they like fish and do all that stuff. Like, I just wanted to disassociate, you know? And so I was not making art. I maybe should have, because you know what really stresses me out is when they're like, you should draw for at least 5 hours a day if you want to be a good artist. You should do this if you want to be a good artist. Like, it's all lies. But I think for me, I wish I did draw more. I think I was afraid because it reminded me too much of what I lost. And so I think for me, it was more of a mind thing of like, oh my gosh, look at me doing the thing that got me here, you know, like, but it wasn't, honestly, I didn't make anything until I decided to make Planet Jane, my short film. And that was because I was ready. Again, let's not judge ourselves when we're grieving and we're going through, some people, like, they just make all this beautiful art when they're suffering, and that's how they grieve. Some people watch Alone and eat Doritos. We cannot judge. But totally forgot what we were talking about because I thought about Doritos. But yeah, you in the back?
So as far as
Yeah, that's a really good question. So my current job now is I'm a building manager. And so I work sort of at an office administrator, building manager. So I sit at a desk all day. And if nobody comes in the office who needs me, I'm gonna do whatever I want. So that's what I'm working on the whole time. I'm working on Planet Jane, I'm working on my film. And so actually it works out better for me to have this stable job that's salaried, that has health care, and I'm able to work on my projects. And so not everybody has the opportunity to be able to do the work at their day jobs, but I do recommend, if you are in animation and you do want to work on your portfolio or have the flexibility of that, try and find a job that's administrative. Because administrative is like, they'll need you really bad 1 second and then you're doing nothing for hours. And so recommend getting those types of gigs for sure. And also make sure that you schedule your time when you're working on your own projects. That's intentional time that you schedule. And you have to have certain days off. For me, what was happening was I worked 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock every day. I'm like, I have a job, I have 2 jobs. Didn't work out so well. Make sure you schedule days off intentionally because you want the time that you do have to be well used. And so that's what I would recommend is like in your phone and calendar, set time, intentional time for you to work on your stuff, leave the house. Great idea, because you're forced to get something done if you're in a coffee shop or else you look weird. But yeah, those are sort of things that I would recommend. And we have a couple minutes left here. So does anybody else have a question they want to ask? Or yeah, you?
So, this is going to be a bit weird, but like I noticed that in a good way, you seem to have a lot of audacity. Where do you get
the audacity? You want some of it? That's so funny. Oh my God, where do you get the audacity? That's a core memory now. I'm gonna tell everybody that when I get home. My parents are gonna be like, yep. I was super introverted in school. I did not talk when I was younger. And honestly, a lot of it was because I have such a big heart. And I know that artists are the same way. We feel very intensely. We have very big hearts, but we have trouble expressing it sometimes. For me, I think why this was so hard when I was let go is because art was a way for me to feel seen and feel heard when I couldn't speak. And so I think when I was let go, I was like, no one wants to hear what I have to say. No one wants to see me. And so I think that's why it did a number on my confidence. And I think that when you understand that if you focus on the people in your life who do love you, who do appreciate you, who do see you, and let people who don't, just let them, let them just do whatever they want, it changes you entirely. You know, and obviously as someone of faith, you know, I have a great relationship with God. He gives me my source of value, my source of belonging, and other people can't touch that. And so personally, like that's where I get it from, because I know at the end of the day, the goal is not any of this. The goal is to love people and impact people for the better. So I guess that's where I get the audacity.
Really great way of putting that, and I'm so
No, that literally was so good, so fantastic. The best way to end this panel. And with that, the panel is over. That's it. Yay!